As soon as it became clear the Democrats were going to manage this improbable victory in both the White House and the Senate in January, all eyes turned to Justice Stephen Breyer. He is 82 years old, and he is the oldest liberal justice on the Supreme Court. At the time, Democrats were fresh off the experience, of course, of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was 87 years old when she died at the end of last summer, just 2 months before the election. Ginsburg was quickly replaced by Amy Coney Barrett, who's 49 years old and who will probably serve on the Supreme Court for decades. There is now a renewed concern among many on the left that if Justice Breyer does not retire while Democrats have control of the Senate, they could lose their narrow window to replace him. Writing in a perspective piece in the Washington Post over the weekend, the dean of UC Berkeley's School of Law said that if Breyer doesn't want to risk having a seat go to someone with an opposing judicial philosophy, which just happened to late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and if he wants to give President Biden the best opportunity to choose a successor who shares his values, Breyer should step down as soon as possible. Right now, Democrats' grip on power, we should note, is pretty darn tenuous. I mean, it's a 50-50 Senate split. Anything's possible. One worry here is the longer Justice Breyer waits to retire, the stronger the possibility that Democrats' hold on power could be interrupted by any number of things on any given day. Or as the New York Times puts it, in a narrowly divided Congress, the Democrats' plans hinge on the good health of some of the Senate's oldest members. Dahlia Lithwick is a senior editor and legal correspondent for Slate. This past December, she actually sat down and interviewed Justice Breyer for Slate. And Erin Carmon, who's a senior correspondent for New York Magazine, she wrote a book about Justice Ginsburg titled Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they both join me now. Dahlia, since you interviewed the justice in December, which is after November, but before the Senate was officially taken by the Democrats, I want to just read this, I thought, interesting exchange between the two of you where you're kind of, I think, very deftly and gingerly asking around this question. So you say, I know you've talked a little bit about term limits for justices and being willing to entertain the idea, and I'm wondering if a little bit of what's animating your willingness to at least consider it is a way to break the gridlock, or if this notion justices are just sitting around too long and they're too old to do their jobs. And I ask that with all due respect, of course. Breyer, well, I can't answer this question because it is too close to something that is politically controversial. I mean, eventually I'll retire. Sure, I will. It's hard to know exactly when. What did you make of that exchange?
I mean, in some sense, Chris, it's so emblematic of Justice Breyer. He is not unaware of the fact that he's almost 83. He is not unaware that it's a 50-50 Senate and something could happen to Pat Leahy and this could all end tomorrow. He worked for the Senate, so he knows all this. And I think what he's saying is, and he's been saying this, by the way, for a very long time, please don't make me look like a partisan hack. The more you make me look like a partisan hack, the more I'm going to push back. And I think that I took that exchange to be kind of a version of he knows all this stuff, but please don't make him say it because that will make it harder for him to step down.
Yeah, it's interesting that, right? The idea that like you're doing this explicitly in a sort of partisan way. I wonder how much with the late Justice Ginsburg that was at play, Erin. I mean, there was a sort of similar situation. Obviously, back in 2013, everyone did the same actuarial math. She was a cancer survivor at that point. I think she was even summoned to the White House and talked with President Obama, kind of like, where are we at on this? How do you think that? What are the lessons there of that episode?
You know, some people thought that Justice Ginsburg didn't want to retire because she didn't want the court to appear partisan. I don't think that that's true because Justice Ginsburg often said things like, I think Hillary Clinton is going to win. And she said things like Democrats are bad at the midterms, but they will win the presidency. So she actually didn't have, even though she liked to sort of say that the court was above politics, she often did actually acknowledge the reality that everybody else but elite lawyers know, which is that the court is deeply political. It is, of course, justices are confirmed through the mechanisms of politics. They are their strategy with respect to politics. I think that the reason that Justice Ginsburg didn't retire is the same reason that she became who she was and got to the Supreme Court, which is that she was incredibly stubborn. She did not listen to anyone else's ideas of what she should do, and she didn't feel like her work was done. Now, Justice Breyer obviously can look over at her example. They were good friends. He understands the politics of this. To the extent that the appearances matter here, for the rest of us on this planet, that sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, let's just live in the real world here. But for an 80-something-year-old elite jurist, these are the kinds of arguments that might make them dig in their heels more. To say, I'm shocked to find gambling here is the posture of Supreme Court justices. So occasionally they would acknowledge what we all know to be the case. And I guess ultimately it's the job of some people to push them. And I think that regardless of how hard you push, they're going to do whatever they want. And I know that sounds fatalistic and frustrating, but that is genuinely what I believe. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's probably true. I think I've come around to this belief on this, that there's a strong psychological core to this, which is that, it's the one truth about life on this planet, which is that it will end. We don't like to spend a lot of time thinking about that. And obviously, that is what looms over these things. It is an acknowledgement in a deep and profound sense of one's own mortality. And it's why senators who are 80 plus run for re-election, which, God, I hope.
Understand this the most are the Dianne Feinsteins of the world. I mean, of course, Dianne Feinstein was deeply sympathetic to Breyer because she's in exactly the same position where she wants to keep on going forever despite being, 88? So when you hear senators say we don't want to push him too hard, they're also talking about themselves.
Yes.
They also are the ones who don't want to give up the gerontocracy.
It is.
And, we can wish it would be different, but this is the dynamic in play. This is the world we live in.
Dahlia?
No, I have two other psychological imperatives that I want to throw into the mix. One is nobody believes more than Justice Breyer that the court is above politics. And you can say that's nuts, but going up to him and saying, do you think the court is in fact a really partisan political body and you want to contribute to that? He's written books about the fact, over and over again says we're not junior varsity politicians. We transcend that. So to me, it's like asking the Easter Bunny if he believes in the Easter Bunny. His whole career is dedicated to this proposition. The other thing, and I think this is important, and I think it goes to the Ginsburg point, she really believed that if people cared, they should get out and vote around the court. They should organize around the court. And my sense is, rather than kind of pressuring Justice Breyer to do the thing that is going to make him, Noah Feldman wrote a really good piece saying the more you push him, the more he digs in. Maybe do a better job organizing around all the other things you can do to reform the courts that nobody's talking about.
Right.
But I do want to push a little bit on that because when Justice Ginsburg died, contributions to the Senate flooded in. Democratic voters did understand that capturing the Senate was what would give them leverage over the Supreme Court after having lost Justice Ginsburg's seat, right? So out of that heartbreak, there was a lot of political mobilization in a map that was very much skewed against them. So what can they do beyond, gaining the Senate? I think ultimately, yes, okay, maybe he would like to say, don't force me off. But ultimately, what else can be done between now and whenever Senate control may or may not shift?
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.